Hello, strangers. Oh, you're back again, are we? I didn't think you'd make it after the last story. Well, today you're in for a treat of a tale. A very finger-licking good treat. Because today's story is called CAnNIbAl. Hi, freaky strangers. Yes, you know what time it is. It's story time. Time to be scared. Time to listen. And time for you to get scared. Do you ever look down at your skin, your flesh, and wonder what it might taste like? Would it taste like pork or chicken? Maybe fish? Maybe you taste just like a cow? Well, have you ever? Well, this story begins in a cabin out in the middle of nowhere. Big trees and forest surrounded the small little wooden hut. It had small windows and a pile of firewood outside. Inside the hut was a small fire burner and a rusty double bed. And an old lady lived there all alone in her 80s. She came up here to spend the last remaining years with her husband that was diagnosed with cancer. The old lady sat staring at an old photo of them both together when they were younger, when they were together. Then a big smile appeared across her face. She got up slowly, went outside, and walked along a long dirt path. She walked and walked till she came to a door in the ground. It was the hottest day it had been in years, and this made the walk to the underground fridge harder than normal. She was hunched over, hand on her back, wheezing and huffing. There were steps going down into the ground fridge, and the area inside was dug into an archway in a bunker-like cul-de-sac. She huffed more while she tried to steady herself, holding the ceiling, dragging her fingers on the rough, uneven wall. As she walked down the steps, the 80-year-old lady managed to reach the bottom, and there, in the middle of the room, was her husband hanging by his ankles and his throat cut. He was naked and pale and very dead. Rusty buckets sat underneath his head, full of blood. The smell of rust and blood filled the air. Also around the room was deer's bodies hanging, stripped right back to the bone and the muscle, with their heads laying on a table. She paused over a chair and looked up at her husband's body. She starts talking while studying the corpse. The husband she had loved for years. Hello, husband. Well, you're here like you wanted. I done what you asked, and now it's time for you to be with me for the rest of your days. She slowly kicks over an axe on the floor. She kicks it closer towards her feet. She bends over and picks up the old axe between her fingers. Okay, we said the hut first. The old lady stands and hacks into his chest. You can hear cracking sounds as there's blood dripping onto the floor. She drops the axe, smiling. Yes, the heart, I promised. She grabbed hold of his skin, pulling it apart, and then prized open the chest cavity and pushed her small, frail hands inside. She moves it around and pulls out his heart. That wasn't too hard, my dear. She looks down at his heart. The heart that loved me. She bent down and wiped the blood of her husband's face. I will be back soon for the hands. She starts to slowly walk back up the staircase. While she's moaning and holding her back, she got to the top. She took a deep breath as she reached to the last step. She was just about to take the last step when she slips back. She rolls down the staircase, hitting every concrete step. On the way down, she hits her bones hard on her brittle old bones. Oh. The poor old lady lays there unconscious. On the floor, no one to help her. All alone. A day later, she wakes up. She can't feel her legs or her left arm at all. Her eyes dart around the room as she tries to think of a way to move, but she can't. She's trapped, unable to move. The parts of her body that were moving hurt very badly. She wiggled her fingers and tried to sit up. She slowly managed to wiggle her fragile body over towards a wall, and she looks up at her husband. Oh well, dear, don't look like we'll be living as long as we thought. She just sat there. 2 days passed, and she still had no feelings in her legs or arms, laying in a puddle of her own urine. She had dark purple bruises all over her face. She looked tired and lifeless, flies buzzing around the deer's corpses hanging in the room. She looked over at the heart on the floor. It was covered in mud and grit. I will still eat you, dear, she said in a scratchy voice. She laid over on her side and wiggled slowly over to the heart, picked it up and started to eat it. She chewed on the veiny, hard texture of the organ. It tasted bad, but she was hungry. She then again looked up at her husband. Forever, husband. 2 more days passed. She was laying on the floor. Now thousands of flies buzzing around. Maggots crawled out of her husband's chest. The smell of rotten, dead flesh. She looked around. She was hungry. She needed to eat. Her mouth was dry. Her bruises were now a deep yellow colour. Her eyes were lifeless, but she kept on looking over at the axe. She starts to try and move closer, reaching her hand out closer to the axe, and with all her might wiggled closer and closer with her lifeless arm and legs. It was hard, but she managed to get close enough to the axe. Then she looks up. Maggots all fall onto her face. Her hand rushes to pick them up and pushes them into her mouth. She looked into the buckets of blood that stood underneath her husband's corpse. Blood had dried, and there was only crusty lumps of dried blood left inside. She picks it up and eats it. crushing the lumps between her teeth. Then she studies her husband's corpse, pus dripping from his bloated, unrecognizable face. The skin was bloated and white, and the smell was eye-watering bad. She was hungry. She held the axe and looked around, and then she looked down at her useless legs. She started cutting off her leg. It took a long time. It took a long time to cut off. And she had to hack and hack until the limb fell off. Her leg was laying on the floor next to her. She picked it up, gnawing at it, gnawing on the flesh, ripping it with her teeth. Blood soaked her clothes, but she didn't care. She was starving, and she tasted good. Blood poured from her new amputated limb. She didn't even notice. She chewed on her flesh. She chewed on her own flesh, licking the blood of her fingers. The skin was chewy and hard to bite, but she was so hungry. She took a bite too much in her desperate need for food. Then she started gasping, holding her throat while she's choking on her own meat. Her lips changed to a dark shade of blue. She fell on her face in the bloody mud that surrounded her. So how did you guys like that story? Fancy biting off more than you can chew on your own flesh, your own body. But then again, she was extremely hungry. Would you eat yourself in that situation? She was all alone, but now she's dead. Crazy old fools, hey? Well, I hope you enjoyed this story. I hope that it gives you nightmares. I hope that you are scared, and I hope that you'll watch my other stories too. And subscribe, because I wrote this for you. Yes, you. So subscribe, and I'll see you in the next creepy, terrifying tale. Goodbye.